My name is Jeremy Broun. I'm a designer maker in wood. I'm at the British Craftsmanship in Wood exhibition in Cheltenham in 1990. This major exhibition celebrates Betty Norbury's book of the same title. It has been said of furniture makers in particular that they don't make it like that anymore. Betty Norbury then goes on to say that this book proves beyond a shadow of doubt that they do. Betty Norbury has been promoting furniture makers for some years, and I asked her why she staged this exhibition.
There are very few facilities for craftsmen to show their work properly. There are very few exhibitions. There hasn't been an exhibition like this previously.
Well, an enormous effort has obviously been made to stage this exhibition. What is the aim of it, and indeed the book?
The aim of the book is to show the general public that they can buy and commission furniture. And my dearest wish is that when they need a new dining room suite, when they need a new bookcase, they don't just go to the nearest furniture shop, that they stop and they think about it and they realise for themselves and for the makers the joy that can be had from commissioning a piece of furniture.
Well, it's not just furniture that's on show here. It's just about anything conceivable that can be made out of wood. There are nearly 100 craftsmen showing an enormous variety of work, ranging from carvings, wildlife, wood turnery, sculpture, furniture and musical instruments. It is truly magnificent and a pleasure to see both old and new ideas being shown under the same roof. After all, modern work is a continuum of the past, as many of the traditional techniques are still used. Well, having worked in wood myself for, well, goodness me, nearly 30 years now, I was still baffled by some of the techniques used here. This inlaid side table looked as though the shadow effect veneers were burned, but I wasn't sure. Well, the trouble is, exhibitions, rare as they are, tend to be silent places. The work on show offers little explanation other than what can be seen at face value. I was determined to find out what secrets lay behind the work. Well, there's certainly something for everybody at this show, and it's interesting when considering what we do or don't like, that craftsmanship cannot easily be divorced from design. What then is a well-designed piece?
A well-designed piece, in my view, is one which is of practical application and everyday use. The drawers have got to slide in and out. The surface has got to be usable so that it doesn't sort of readily scratch, and it can be used just for everyday purposes. That's, to me, a good design. The way it comes to hand. One desk I looked at is very well made and it's a beautiful design, but you're going to catch your knee every time you sit down in it because it's got a sharp point on this part of the design. That to me is not a good design.
All kinds of people were at the exhibition looking at some quite unusual pieces. And some were in unusual positions, the people that is. I was curious to know what was going on.
I was checking out that there was no allowance for the shrinkage of the drawer bottoms on this particular piece behind me. It's something that obviously we do in our own pieces of furniture, and all individual craftsmen pick up a different thing when they see a piece of furniture. I think sometimes what it boils down to is I think a lot of people go for what the piece looks like now, and they don't necessarily take into consideration that it's not going to necessarily look like that in 10 years' time. And the only thing that's going to possibly change is the way the piece had been thought out, or well thought out.
Why isn't it going to look like that in 10 years' time?
Because if certain parts of the construction, areas of shrinkage weren't allowed for, the piece will probably pull itself apart in 10 years' time.
I suppose it's really a question of public education. Do the public really know what they're looking at? Indeed, do they know what to look for?
I don't think they do, to be honest. I don't think they know the difference between a veneered, an immediately obviously veneered top and a solid top. I think it's sad, but I think it's partly because they've been just used to seeing mass production stuff all the time.
We're not brought up to appreciate beautiful things and to appreciate with wood the basic beauty of wood and the workmanship that goes into making something well.
Yes.
We'd rather actually try and get things cheaply as possible, even if they are shoddy
Yes.
work.
No.
You said it was encouraging to...
It's so encouraging, yes. It's very encouraging to see the ingenuity in the design, craftsmanship as well, and the finish.
Did it come as a surprise?
It has come as a surprise because I hadn't realised that such beautiful work was still being done. It was really so beautiful, really beautiful. I could keep looking at them all day.
What in particular have you been looking at that you like?
All of it. I like the carvings, but I do like the furniture, and I love the different the grain of the wood is what really gets me, the beauty of the grain of the living wood.
Any particular piece that's caught your attention?
Well, I must admit I've admired that desk very much indeed.
Well, this is a Carlton House writing table made in 1770. It's made in satinwood, tulip wood, boxwood, rosewood, and ebony details. On the top here we've got satinwood. This is satinwood here. So I found some nice pieces of satinwood and we just joined them together side by side. On the edge moulding here we've got some ebony, and around the drawer edges we've got rosewood, Indian rosewood. All the cross banding is tulip wood, and we've got a leather skiver in green on the top.
How did the piece come about?
They were designed for Carlton House in Pall Mall in 1770. This particular piece was commissioned by a royal, we believe, and it was given to one of his servants for his work to the crown. I saw this piece about a year ago in a shop in London, and went along and had a look at it before it was sold. And I had a commission from a client locally, and he asked me if I could make a replica. So I set to work and got cracking. We took photographs, and I was able to work for all the handle details and all the cross banding and everything from the photographs, and I was able to make scale drawings from that. Particular points that interest me are the cross banding around the satinwood legs, which is all inlaid with tulip wood and boxwood and ebony. And these details were quite difficult to put in, and I also had trouble finding some really good timbers. And I've got tulip wood, satinwood, rosewood, and this is purple heart, which should eventually go lighter with age. We had the handles made in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham, and they're solid silver with SA, and it says Birmingham 90 on. So it's just about 202 years since the original was made.
Now, at exhibitions like this, one invariably sees people crawling under tables and looking underneath. What's going on over here, Jeremy?
Well, I tried to make this piece as original as possible, and by looking at the original in London, I was able to see the construction. So I tried to make it almost exactly the same. And even the back curves are all bricked up traditionally and then hand veneered afterwards. Even the drawers, the screws in the back of the drawers are all as they should be. And all the drawers are very solid and they're very thin. It gives a nice sound. Yeah, this particular piece, this Carlton House desk, really should be in the middle of a room. And the trouble with exhibitions is that they tend to be pushed against a wall. But it really should be in the middle, and then everybody can walk around it and really see the detail.
That's what everybody says. Well, let's have a look at some other craftsmen's work.
We're looking at these pieces by Max Cooper. He's made a lovely little box here, and the detail is quite exquisite. There's a little escutcheon within the escutcheon on the front here. It really is pretty. And then there's a collector's box here, and it really is gorgeous. I can take a drawer out. You can see it's picked out dovetails with inlay. And these are really quite heavy, beautiful things, and very well finished. Very nice piece. I think Max, his training has been from a cabinet maker and a restorer, and I think that's where he's basically got his talent from. But it really is beautiful things. There's a gorgeous clock in walnut, which we can look at. And the marquetry detail on that, it really is fantastic. And it's as it would have been made traditionally. It really is gorgeous. You can't find a better clock made like that today. It's an oak frame which has been veneered in walnut, and it really is very nicely made. The back is panelled, which for a clock this age is a really exceptional detail. And it just really is superb. And we've got the twists up here. I think they're called barley sugar twists. And if they're English, they usually go opposite each other and turn opposite ways, as this clock does. On some French pieces, I think the twists go the same way.
Is it the sort of piece you'd make?
I'd love to make this. Yeah.
Can a craftsman ever sort of part with a piece like this? I mean, how do you feel after you spent several months on?
Well, I find it very difficult to part with a piece. The Carlton House took me about 12 months of work, and it was kicking around the workshop, and I've been trying desperately to keep it clean for the client, and it really is difficult. It's heart-wrenching to let it go.
Perhaps the most fascinating bit to make, and difficult to come to that, was the motion works on the front here. This is where one reduces the minutes and turns them into hours. So you have a 12-to-1 reduction performed by these 4 clocks. An extremely awkward thing to make, since one requires some very intricate boxwood turnings inside that all rotate at different speeds. This is a genuine piece of clockwork, the difference being that it's entirely made of wood, with one concession being that I used sterling silver numerals for the front, and we have a perfect stone weight there, hung on a gut line. The principle of a clock is you have the weight there, which is obviously bearing down. It's wound on this barrel, and then it goes through a series of gears, a gear train, sort of reducing all the time till we get to the top, and the little tiny escape wheel. This is made of laminated boxwood, unlike the rest of the cogs, which are laminated walnut. Then we have the actual escape mechanism, where there's lignum vitae pallets, letting out a second at a time. And this is regulated by the pendulum. One does not have to lubricate this clock, because the bearings are made of lignum vitae, an extremely hard and very greasy wood, naturally greasy, and the spindles are maple, and the two slide over each other very nicely indeed. This also reduces the problem of dust, with it being a skeleton clock and uncovered. One can blow the dust off and it won't be attracted to the bearings as in a normal clock. Although, having said that, if it were going in a particularly dusty location, it is possible to encase the whole clock in a glass dome. One thinks carefully about the design, like for instance how the cogs will work on the pinions, tooth shape, and everything else to do with it. And I don't usually draw very much, but I go straight into making something in wood, probably a rough piece of wood, and having got that to a satisfactory level, then I make the proper thing.
Well, that's the thing about working in wood. We all have a different approach. Some are more cautious and need to work out all the problems beforehand, and others, like myself, are a trifle impatient and like to work it out as they go along. Perhaps one has a vision as to how the piece will eventually be, and it becomes a journey, indeed an adventure. What else was there that caught my eye? Oh yes, this delightful music stand, beautifully engineered and as light as a feather. It was fully adjustable with nicely detailed moving parts. There was one coffee table you could have easily just walked past without hardly noticing, and that was Lee Sinclair's convertible. It was almost out of place in this exhibition. Not that it wasn't immaculately made, but the thing about it was its design. This table easily changes shape to fulfill 4 table functions. And when talking about design, there's nothing quite like the chair. I mean, it is probably the most over-designed object, and yet still we never quite run out of ideas. It was interesting to notice the various influences in the work at the exhibition. Krenov-inspired cabinets, the honest construction and fitness to purpose of the arts and crafts movement, and the influence of the Orient.
Robert Ingham, I saw you showing this cabinet to people just now, and I was rather mystified as to how it works. Is there some secret to it?
Well, it's not a secret really, Jeremy. It's a necessity. If you have a look, you see that it's a very two-dimensional surface. Basically, it's a picture. I found that I couldn't include anything that projected from that surface in such a way as to complement the image. So I thought about ways of overcoming that. And while it was still in early stages of construction, before the back had been inserted, I reached behind and pushed. And that was the solution. So the simple answer was to have the handles or some kind of projection from the back which enabled the drawers to be pushed out. Once the drawer is out far enough, you can grasp it and it becomes a conventional drawer. Perhaps we ought to have a look behind. As you can see, the back is almost as attractive as the front. If you press the buttons, the drawer is pushed out. Quite a lot of thought went into the choice of material. I looked at 3 or 4 different types of material, but decided on the olive ash because in its own way it has a landscape quality to it.
Yes.
It was extremely fortuitous to find a piece with something that could be a heavenly body, a sun or a moon. Having a background in engineering, I applied some of that thinking to this piece, and it's almost a form of wood engineering, where with a series of well-planned jigs, one can ensure that dimensional accuracy is achieved. It also has a lovely visual delusion as well. I mean, although this is highly precise, if you look at them, it almost goes off course in a way because the grain comes out at an angle. I don't know if that's something you...
Well, no British exhibition would be complete without the work of Alan Peters, who has not only inspired so many others, but his work is clearly in the 20th century.
Well, I like to think it's in the 20th century. It's strange in a way, but if I actually get a lot of my inspiration from the past, as in fact on this bookcase, I think there is a great distinction actually in looking back to the past in order to get inspiration, but to do that in order to move forward. And I sometimes think there's a little bit too much looking back in this country without thinking of going forward. Well, this is, I think, quite typical, you know, in a way of so much of my work, in the sense that visually it's very simple. And it kind of in a way belittles the amount of effort that's gone into it. We've actually averaged getting on for 600 hours into this piece, if you take into account the prototypes and the initial sketches and the drawings and so on. Because it's actually quite difficult to actually construct, although visually, as I say, it's a very simple concept. Well, it's obviously functional in the sense that it's designed to take a tremendous amount of books. But I played around quite a lot with the visual element on this side. And I can imagine the clients not necessarily filling it up completely with books, but having one or two other things displayed, like a piece of ceramic or glass as well. So I look on it in a way as a versatile piece, almost a piece of sculpture. It has tremendous advantages in the sense that it only takes up 19 inches of actual floor space. The actual construction is quite difficult. We've got on this corner joint, for example, mortise and tenon going in, everything's on an angle. And the great thing about things that are simple, of course, they just have to be right. And often it requires, say, more skill to do something very visually simple. That's perhaps to carve a cabriolet or something much more red.
The fan table that you're showing here at the exhibition looks to me clearly inspired by your travels.
Yes, I think it is, and yet it wasn't the direct travel which inspired that piece. I'd actually been up to an exhibition at the V&A on trains, and I remember coming back on the train, and that table was actually designed on a piece of paper coming back on the train, because in this fan exhibition. But whether it would have been quite the same table had I not previously been to Japan anyway, you know, I wasn't really sure. This whole thing about inspiration is interesting. I mean, a lot of people get their inspiration from the latest sort of technology, don't they? Other people get it from modern architecture. I think on the whole, I tend to get mine from the past.
I suppose the only things that are sort of unusual about it, I suppose the malachite head is unusual. I bought this malachite egg from one of these crystal shops and decided I would shape it with diamond drills into this little head on his mace. And after about a quarter of an hour of grinding it, I was violently ill, actually choking, eyes streaming. I was extremely allergic to malachite dust, which is some sort of copper mineral, isn't it? The actual mace itself is turned from Coca-Cola and is split into two halves, fed into the hand and glued in the middle there. The gold beads are basically earrings, which of course got a gold pin attached, so you can simply drill a hole and put them in. Some of them I've made into bells by drilling them and slitting them. The patterns on the sleeve and on the leg to create the checkering is simply done with small punches, which you know, are made out of steel rod, just textures it. Probably the most difficult part of the carving, I suppose, would be these ribbons and the straps on his leg. Now the trick with the ribbons, if you call it a trick, you see they're really quite strong. The trick is that they are not hanging loose. They're attached to his leg here, and you see they form a kind of network. You see, they're all touching each other and they're all joined together, so that they're actually quite strong. You see, there's nothing that's just hanging loose on its own, which would easily broken off. That one is a little bit fragile, but you've really got a kind of network which is quite strong. These straps here are probably the most difficult part, but you can undercut those with dentist drills and then feed some abrasive cloth through the slots and gradually work down the leg. It's a tedious job, but there's no magic about it. It's just tedious.
So how many on average, how many pictures will you draw of that? And presumably from lots of different angles? Or?
Well, that one, because it's quite complicated, was drawn in great detail from all four sides, plus detailed drawings of the hands and these ribbons and things like this, which are set up on. I would get a ribbon and tie it around a piece of drain pipe or something to get the hang of that, do drawings of it. I also use a lot of photographs. I use Polaroids now. See, if I want a hand like that holding a mace, I just get somebody to hold it and I click, a couple of Polaroids and just go and carry on working.
It's all based on curves, double curves, triangulating against each other. So the sort of normal inherent twist that you would get in a pedestal table is knocked out. And then you've got these wonderful gaps that keep running into each other. And to me, that was the whole point. The surprising thing is, now that it's made, is that very few people actually look at the underframe. They all want to play with the mechanism, which is rather taken over from it. All the boards are manipulated from within the tabletop, and they all double pivot. That way we could keep them inside the thickness of the top, which is only sort of 25 mil, and keep it quite light. This system is just based on pivots and spring catches which engage the boards. And I think, funnily enough, it's the spring catches that make it so exciting for somebody to play with. Because every time you manipulate a board, it clicks back into position. I think that safety of the click is rather exciting. Okay, at the moment we have the backgammon surface showing. To get to the next surface, let's pick the bottom one. You just press the two carriages and rotate it right through. Same with the ones opposing. That gives you your second choice, which is cards, which have a leather surface. To get to the next one of the internal surfaces, take the boards nearest you, get them out of the way, lift the board and rotate it through 180 and click the little spring catches. Then move it through, bring the other one down, lift, rotate, and drop the catches. And that gives you number 3, which is the chessboard. Similar, to get to number 4, get rid of one of the boards, rotate right through, then lift towards you, rotate, and press the spring catches. And then get out of the way. Next one flat, lift, rotate, drop in the spring catches. And that gives you your last surface for when it's a side table, which are oysters of laburnum.
Yes, well, it's quite simple really. Now this is one piece I could have easily taken home with me. Now what piece would you have taken home?
I'd take home Max Cooper's collector's box. And if I lived anywhere, if I could change my home and my furniture, then I very much like Nielsen & Nielsen's display unit and Welsh dresser. I think this isn't a fair question. There's a lot here that I love.
Well, I prefer the plainer pieces, not the futuristic ones, clever as they are. But I think I would have to say that there's a desk in walnut. It's an exhibition number 68, and it's by Hugo Eggleston. It's beautifully made. The drawers run, and they run so smoothly. Of particular interest, very often when you look at a piece of furniture, you'll notice round the back that it's a load of rubbish. In this piece, it is excellent. It's well finished.
Well, what I would like for my birthday would be the puzzle of all the animals and the birds that all fit into one another. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
Yes. I could spend, I'd never get tired of it, sort of looking at how clever it is.
Yeah, well, I particularly like the mermaid table, and there's a hippo swimming in the water. It's just its head above the glass. And it really is pretty. I think most people can relate to that because of all the endangered species and things. And it really is a nice piece of timber.
It's obviously difficult to stick one's neck out and say that there's one piece that you like better than the others. There's some lovely pieces here. David Bauman's clock is a tour de force, but Tony McMullen's corner cabinet really is the piece that I would, if I was going to take something away, that would be the piece. It's the combination of colour and the simplicity of outline, but there's also an intrigue of construction there that really does excite me.
I really like, I've always called it the Rain Man cabinet, Andrew Var's veneered wardrobe, which has got a lot of humour in it. It's very un-English in a funny sort of way. I can see it being far more at home in America, but I like it, I like the humour. I would take that away quite happily.
I like the chair, the rope chair, because it's not rope. No, I like the rope chair because it's using wood and modern techniques. It's using traditional approach to furniture making, but modern design.
Yeah, I think also the Harlequin box, I think it's a very traditional idea of having, similar to a tea caddy, but actually staining the sycamore veneer down to different colours and bringing it right up to date. It's superbly made, very, very finely. And the thing about making something small like that box and the detailing in it is it really does have to be spot on. There's no leeway in between. You can get away with probably a certain amount of leeway on a bigger piece of furniture, but on something small like that, it's got to be perfect. It's in front of your eyes all the time, and people are trying to find fault with it in a way because it is so small.
I tend to agree with that. The smaller work demands special skills. Not that the larger pieces here missed my scrutiny. I was indeed impressed with the overall quality of workmanship. Mind you, I prefer the plainer pieces myself, where the character and subtlety of the wood shows through. But what a delight going round this exhibition and doing what I wasn't supposed to do, touch the pieces. I particularly like the work of Roger Curry because it was a departure from the somewhat traditional flavour of the exhibition. I thought his laminated tables and chairs to be both ambitious and adventurous, being bold yet understated, if you see what I mean. Of course, laminating is an important technique used in Scandinavian furniture. Perhaps these pieces had a truly European flavour insofar as the technical disciplines were mixed. Well, in summing up, what was the overall response to the exhibition?
Response to my exhibition has been absolutely super. We're getting in a really good mix of woodworkers looking for inspiration and buyers. And that's obviously what I'm after for the craftsmen, because to succeed, these craftsmen have to have buyers, they have to have patrons.
Well, craftsmen have always needed patronage, haven't they, in the past, in the church, in the aristocracy. Now, in fact, we still need it. But it's a much broader section of society who can actually become patrons now, and it's an exciting thing. And for years and years, my problem was simply that the people who could afford my furniture preferred to buy antiques, and the people who liked it couldn't afford it. Fortunately, that is now changing in the sense that more and more people can actually afford it. So,
I think the prices are very realistic and reasonable for the amount of work which has gone in.
And do you think it's possible that old and new work can mix?
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. Yes. Yes, no doubt about it. I think that good old and good new can cohabit very, very easily together and bring out the best in each other. I think that they actually work to each other's advantage often.
Well, I think it's a fantastic exhibition. We really need more of these types of exhibitions for our craftsmen. We don't really have that many venues that we can put furniture in, but this is really nice, a nice setting. There's an awful lot of furniture here from all sorts of different people and showing very different talents, and it's nice to see them all together, and we've had a very good response here.
There aren't many of these exhibitions. This is probably, I would think, the biggest collection of its type ever put on under one roof, at least in this country as far as I'm aware. I sincerely hope that it won't be the last. I hope that it's going to be an eye-opener for the public.
Quoting from Betty Norbury's book, they don't make it like that anymore, do they?
This has always been rubbish, hasn't it? I mean, the work of modern craftsmen, whether it's in silversmithing, ceramics, furniture, is actually at a height now which is far advanced. I mean, in the other century, there's no doubt about that. I mean, we have people who can reproduce anything equally as well as the 18th century. But actually, a lot of modern furniture makers actually produce work which is superior.